This is Mr. Erlin. We're going to talk about part 3 of triangle congruence now. You'll remember in our last session, we came up with the realization that there are 4 valid triangle congruence theorems we've discovered so far. Angle, angle, side, angle, side, angle, side, angle, side, and side, side, side. You'll remember we talked about not using side, angle, angle, as it really is the same as angle, angle, side. They're mirror images or reflections of each other. Similarly, we discovered that angle, 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 and angle, side, side are insufficient information to prove that two triangles are unique or congruent. Therefore, they cannot be used as triangle congruence theorems. You'll also remember that we said that side, side, angle and angle, side, side are the same relationship. So we really only need to consider these 6 cases. Now the question is, these two are easy to identify. Side, 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 and angle, angle, angle are easy to figure out because they're all sides or all angles. But when we're looking at angle, angle, side, or angle, side, angle, they both have 2 angles and a side. How can we tell them apart? And the same issue is true of angle, side, side, and side, angle, side, which is even more important because one of them is sufficient to prove triangles are congruent and the other is not. So we have a little analogy. I call this my Mario Kart analogy. This is in no way an attempt to steal royalties or copyright infringement efforts from the companies that make this. This is actually a photograph of a little doll or a cart that was purchased. It's a live image. You'll notice that Mario Kart is driving along a path. This is a traditional Mario Kart environment. He has a road that he drives along, and occasionally he runs into these blocks, these power-ups. And when he runs across a power-up, something happens. It usually makes a noise like doo-doo-doo, or some fun noise, and that noise then prompts a change in action. He now has some other attribute, something like extra speed, or more thrust, or throwing ice cream cones, or whatever he's got. So we're going to use that same analogy, but we're going to change the street, and instead of it being a simple path he's following, now it's a triangle. And instead of him driving across these power-ups, he's going to drive across marks that indicate congruence on these triangles. So picture yourself being super small in a Mario Kart and driving along a triangle you're trying to use to determine whether it's AAS or SAA or ASA. As he drives along, when he reaches one of the marks marked as congruent, he picks it up, kind of like a power-up. And because that was a side he came across, 2 marks, straight hash marks, are considered a side mark congruence, he picks up an S. When he continues on, he'll come across this corner. Because they're arched and in the angle corner, those are called angle hash marks. Therefore, he picks up an A. As he continues along, he reaches this middle spot. Notice that this element of the triangle is not marked as congruent. As a result, it's not really strong or secure. In fact, it's a little bit tenuous to drive across. He gets a little bit nervous and he hears a creak. But just one of those in a row, and he's okay. He can continue along his way. He reaches the corner, finds the third component, which is an angle, pulls it over, and he's given an SAA. As you remember from our last discussion, even though it comes out like SAA, we'll name it AAS. We'll name it alphabetically, the A first. Well, what if we had started in a different place? This is the same triangle. It still has the same 3 components. But by placing Mario in a different location, can't I get a different answer? Well, let's see. As I move along, I come across this angle. Turn that into an A. Then I turn and I start along this side and I run across this congruent side. That turns me into an S. I reach this corner. What do I find? There is no mark there. Creak. And so I just think about that. I don't get a letter. I just notice that there's a creak there. There's a risk there. If I run into 2 of those in a row, creak, bump, 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 game over. Mario crashes. He cannot continue on this path. That's how we know not to continue along this part of the path. This is a danger zone. It has 2 areas that are unmarked as congruent. Therefore, he can never drive across this. He has to start from either this side and work his way around, or from right here and work his way around. Let's review. You have to start at the border between 2 or more not marked as congruent parts and the safe path of congruent marks, driving away from the danger zone. You pick up an A when crossing an angle marked as congruent, or an S when crossing a side marked as congruent. And crossing over one unmarked item, uncongruent or not marked as congruent, is fine. But if you cross over 2, it's game over. So let's take a look. Let's do some practice. Where would you start in this case? Well, your first step is understanding what the danger zones are. The danger zones are places that are not marked as congruent. The second step is where do you start based on those danger zones? Well, I can start on this side because it's the end of a strip of danger zones, or I can start here, which is also the end of a strip of danger zones. If I pick from the green starting point, my path is away from the danger zones and across these marks of congruent, in this case giving me a side, angle, side. Or I could have started on this side, which would also give me side, angle, side. Either path will do. Both result in the same relationships. What about this one? Well, again, first step is to identify the danger zones. I'm going to identify 1, 2, 3 danger zones. And notice that this one is a single danger zone. That's going to make a creak, but it's not going to be a problem. It's only when there's 2 in a row that's a problem, a risk of actually breaking the roadway and falling to my ultimate demise. So I need to start at the end of one of these danger zones, either here or here. If I start on the green, I'll continue around and I'll start with a side, then an angle, then an angle, S-A-A. If I start with the blue, I'll begin here with an angle, angle, side. Well, angle, angle, side, and side, angle, angle, as we've discussed, are really the same thing. They are transformations of each other, therefore we're simply going to use the name that's alphabetically first. AAS is what we would call this one. Let's check for understanding. Determine which triangle congruency relationship, AAA, AAS, ASA, etc., can be used to describe each triangle. Looking at this one, I can start at any of these points because there's only one angle that's a danger zone. Therefore, no matter where I start, I can work my way around this triangle and I can achieve. Good, this is side, side, side. Let's try another. Which is this? Good, this is side, angle, side. What about this one? Good, this is ASS. This is my danger zone over here, so I can start this way. A-S, creak, S. Or I could start this way. S, creak, S-A. But again, we would call that ASS. What about this one? Good, this is ASA. My danger zone is up here, so I travel in this direction, ASA. Or from here, this direction, ASA. What's this one? Good. From here, I begin A, creak, A-S. If I were to choose to avoid this danger zone starting this path, I would get S, A, creak, A, which we would call as AAS. Lastly, this one, your old familiar friend, angle, angle, angle. Thanks very much for watching this video. I look forward to working more with you.